Thank you to the organizers. I'm Josh McVeigh-Schultz and my collaborator is Katherine Isbister. In our paper, we make the case that the current approaches to meeting one another in VR point to a blind spot about just how weird and alien social interaction in VR and XR could become as we begin to take full advantage of the medium. So in the wake of COVID, many of us have become quite familiar with the communication challenges posed by video conferencing platforms. Applications like Zoom tend to obscure the kinds of embodied cues that we rely on to communicate with one another in physical space. Unlike video conferencing, VR can be really good at gracefully handling these aspects of embodiment and spatialization. In VR, we can orient other people into the environment through gaze, proximity, gesture. And in these ways, meetings in VR can replicate some of the advantages of rich embodiment that we appreciate when we meet in physical space. But the promise of this medium as a telepresence solution has also, we argue, led to a pursuit of realism as the primary goal for innovators in this space. And while screens, whiteboards, sticky notes, et cetera, all of that can be useful in VR, our concern here is that this pursuit of verisimilitude could also blind us to new communicative affordances that are not available in physical contexts. And the trap here is a familiar one. Holland and Stornetta leveled a similar critique 3 decades ago when they argued the real promise of technology is to offer new kinds of communicative affordances rather than merely imitate the mechanisms of face-to-face interaction. We can think about the alternative in terms of social augmentation, and HCI has a long track record of designing these sorts of systems. In the context of social VR, augmentations of perception have long been shown to have powerful social effects. But unlike this foundational work, we're more interested in social affordances that can be perceived simultaneously by multiple participants. And we've taken to describing the new social capacities unlocked by these novel affordances as social superpowers. So what does this alternative world of weird sociality and social superpowers look and feel like? Well, one area we draw from is emerging design insights and practices in social VR. In 2018, we did a deep dive into emerging social affordances in commercial social VR applications. And I won't be able to get into rich detail in this talk, but I will share one example from Rec Room pictured in the top right. Rec Room likes to gather feedback from their users in regular Q&As, and Rec Room's creators built an auditorium space to house these events. The creators found that it was difficult for participants to identify who in the audience was speaking at a given time. So to solve this problem, they designed a giant cat non-player character, or NPC, that sits on the stage to the side of the speakers. And the idea is that the cat directs its gaze at whoever is holding the virtual mic, so other attendees can then follow the cat's eyes to track who is speaking at a given time. And the example illustrates a broader pattern that we see in this space where creators start with familiar scaffolding of place and space, but then start to stretch beyond familiar experiential templates to discover new affordances and facilitate new kinds of social behavior. Social VR has also seen a lot of experimentation in terms of embodied signaling. And these examples have inspired our own research through design explorations. And our early experiments in this area include work at both USC and UCSC, and include, for example, prototypes that make subtle social signals like gaze into more explicit traces, or dynamic visualizations that would help people balance participation by quickly gauging who is speaking more. And at UCSC, this work in conversation balance in social VR was extended by Katherine Isbister's master's student in a recent thesis. In this image, as participants talk, balls corresponding to their avatar colors fill up a column, giving them a sense of how much each person is talking relative to others. The final method that we've used to explore this possible future takes cues from Mark Weiser's use of fiction in his classic Vision for 21st Century Computing. In our paper, a brief vignette follows Stella, a freelance social augmentation consultant who helps teams customize their communication tools and coordinate better in telepresence contexts. In our scenario, we invite the reader to make inferences about everyday features of Stella's toolkit, including conversation trackers, parody visualizers, and meeting moderators. While we don't have time to unpack the whole story here, we encourage you to read the paper itself to get a sense of how this scenario enabled us to try on and test out various assumptions within the logic of a story world. To offer some final reflections, here are some thoughts and questions that continue to drive our work in this area. Weirdness is a spectrum that provides an alternate target to realism. But how then do we stay productively weird and avoid the realism trap going forward? What are the best ways to shape and prototype this future? And finally, what kinds of social superpowers does VR best afford, and how should they function? With support from NSF, we're currently iterating in this space with research through design prototyping, and we invite you to join us in our exploration by trying out our research prototypes when they're ready to be field tested. Thank you.